It's an extraordinary story. A little girl, neglected, rejected, abandoned by her parents. For comfort, she snuggles up in the farmyard kennels with the dogs. That becomes her home. They become her family for the next 6 years. They protect her, feed her, maybe even love her. And in return, she begins to act like them.
This is a video that we've mentioned quite a few times here on this channel. And I know there's going to be a point in time where we're just going to actually react to it because it's super fascinating and interesting, because unlike the kids on TikTok nowadays that claim that they have severe mental issues from trauma, with that trauma being something as severe as their parents taking away their iPhone one night, I thought it'd be interesting to dive deep into a video on what actual trauma looks like. And I refer to this video a lot of times in my videos, so I feel like giving it the justice it actually deserves and watching the whole thing with you guys would be super interesting. Quickly before we get in today's video, finally made a Discord, link in the description if you want to join. But granted that sometimes in this video, you may find it hard to watch, so just a viewer discretion at the start of this video. But with that all being said, let's watch it.
At first, this looks like some kind of strange hoax. Ukrainian girl, Oksana Malaya, running, jumping, eating and barking, just like a dog. But this is no fraud.
And well, judging by just the first few seconds of watching this, you can really assume that I don't think she's on social media. This has been as a result of utter complete child neglect, where the parents had too many children and completely neglected her, and one night apparently left her out in the pouring rain, so she gathered shelter by living with the dogs outside. Again, completely different from a lot of the stuff we're seeing online. And that's why I feel like it's so important to create videos like this and for people to get just a better understanding. This is the type of trauma that people go through to have things like DID. They don't dress up in funny costumes or cosplay to make fun of this stuff, to make light of it for attention and views. And when doing so, it really does undermine the actual problem that's at hand and the very real people that go through something like this, and makes it so much harder for them to get diagnosed and harder as a whole for them to even just cope.
Mum had too many kids. We didn't have enough beds, so I crawled to the dog and started living with her.
Then apparently, as the story goes, Oksana got left outside one night because her family were a bunch of alcoholics and, like she said, had far too many children. So Oksana slept with the dogs and lived outside, which must have been for quite some time as well, apparently. With no human contact for a while and living outside with the dogs, when found, catastrophic consequences as a result of that. And now why, as a result of that, is what we're seeing on screen. Oksana acting like dogs. I assume, one, as a coping mechanism, and secondly, because she spent more time around the dogs than her actual family at a very young age.
She used to show her tongue when she saw water, and she used to eat with her tongue and not her hands.
Oksana is now 22 and lives in a special care home. Remarkably, she is able to speak, able to communicate some feelings, and that's some progress.
Well, I remember her when she was initially brought here. She wasn't like a human being. She was like a small animal. About half a year later, she had completely changed.
That's insane to me that she's actually 22. I actually thought she was a lot younger personally, but despite that being the case, unfortunately, there's just going to be irreversible damages there caused by what happened in her childhood. Growing up with dogs, which I assume must have been a very long time then, as she went and got professional help at the age of 22 to try and break some of those cycles. Again, it's going to be practically impossible for her now to ever live a normal life. Having your early stages of life being dictated by pretty much dogs, right? Because that's all she had as a family for many years, it seems. It's just incredibly sad that that is literally the type of trauma that you have to go through to start pretending to be other things. I know we've watched a few videos as well in the past where people claim to be animals, and obviously I kind of just make fun of it because the way they're going about it is just ridiculous. You know, oh, they fancy being a bird one day, so now they're a bird and their pronouns are caca, caca, and then tomorrow, who knows, guys, they might be a dolphin. It just doesn't work like that. You don't really get to pick and choose. It's not like Oksana at the age of 3 was like, you know, think I really fancy being a dog around about now. That would be fun. Think of the TikTok views I would get. And honestly, that's why I make a lot of these videos, because I find it just completely disgusting that people can even create stuff online and just kind of brush it off as harmless fun, right? Like trying to manipulate people's goodwill in cases of malingering and pretending to have these issues and preying on people's goodwill to the point where I know even the video we covered yesterday with these DID fakers basically just bomb reviewing this hospital, which by the way, they're still doing. And actually, after posting that, I saw that the hospital actually took down their video. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it was yesterday's video. I'll leave a link here on screen now and in the description. If you guys want to go watch that, I highly recommend it. Or a bunch of these TikTok kids have just been review bombing a hospital because they talked about the very real cases in which this happens and how it just doesn't line up with what these TikTokers are doing. It's not something that you're like proud or impressed by or anything like that. I don't have anything similar to what these people have, but even in my case, say like head twitches, that's not something I want to parade, or I'm not proud of that. And that's why I also think it's super important to watch stuff like this. It's hard to watch. That's the point. It's not supposed to be fun, dancing. Oh, I can change into different characters when I want to. It's like really dark, depressing, hard to watch stuff.
But certain situations still trigger deeply ingrained responses.
When I feel lonely, I find myself doing anything. I crawl on all fours. This is how lonely I am. Because I have nobody. I spend my time with dogs. I go for walks and do anything I want to. Nobody notices that I crawl on all fours.
And I feel like now, as a result of what happened earlier on in her life, it's just going to be a downward spiral of complete loneliness. How can you expect to live with someone who now thinks they're a dog? That in itself has to be challenging and hard. And I'm sure she probably kind of knows that deep down as well. So now anytime that she finds herself being lonely, it probably brings up previous trauma from when she was a kid and felt lonely. Like she just explained there, she'll go back to old habits and completely act like a dog. Because like she says, that's what gives her comfort at the end of the day.
When we're talking about how does a child learn to live with dogs, there's obviously no deal as such, but there's give and take. So the dogs are giving their love, their attention, their acceptance in a sense. And what the child must give is that they've got to learn to adapt to the dog situation. And if that means eating raw meat and scavenging a rubbish tip, that's what they're going to have to learn to do, because otherwise they're not going to survive.
And when things are so dire and bleak as what happened in her childhood, that's basically what you have to do, right? It's either that or die. I mean, there's literally no other option. Just imagine for a second. I know there's loads of people out there that don't have the best childhoods ever, but to be completely neglected, especially in a place like Ukraine, by her parents who are alcoholics and didn't even try and bother to maybe put her up for adoption, which would have been obviously a way better scenario than what she went through in the first place. But then have your only hope, your best chance of survival to just be living with animals. That's dire and really depressing. And that's an actual cause of real trauma. Again, I watch some of these TikTok kids and some of them that actually try and dive deep into why they have trauma in the first place. It is the most pathetic thing I think I've ever seen in my life. It'll be stuff like, can you believe my parents are actually trying to charge me rent? My parents don't want me to live in their house anymore and I'm in my 20s. My parents just don't give me my own space. Oh my God. And you know, like to a certain extent, it's just not that bad at the end of the day. I find like a lot of things now are so easygoing. So our concept of trauma, it's just not that bad to what it was, say like 50 years ago, or in the case of like the video we're watching now. It's just not that bad. Yes, those things may upset you, but they're not going to be upsetting you enough to really cause real trauma.
I'd like you to ask Oksana if this house is a particular place she knows.
Using drawings, child psychologist Lynn Fry tries to determine what damage the years spent with dogs have done to Oksana's intellectual and social development.
A drawing of a person has always been taken as quite a good judge of basic ability, if you like. And her drawing was very similar to you would expect from a 6-year-old.
Cognitive tests also show this 22-year-old has the mental age of a 5 or 6-year-old. And because Oksana missed out on so much human contact during her early years, she also missed out on the chance to learn basic human skills. Psychologists believe she'll never be able to catch up.
Having your most vital years as well of learning when you're younger is just so vital and important, and to have that completely taken away with no chance or hope to catch back up with the rest of the world has left now the situation this really depressing rest of her life, right? Like, she's always going to need help. She's always going to need support. Again, nothing like the TikTok kids we watch who are able to do pretty much everything by themselves, have access to absolutely everything. If you have these actual diagnoses and if you actually have these problems, the last thing on your mind is really going to be, let me post this on social media. We even watched a video yesterday of this girl who got herself a DID cake to celebrate. Do you think Oksana, after this 60 minutes, got a celebration cake to celebrate the fact that she's never going to be able to live a normal life again? Do you think that's normal behavior of people that actually suffer with this?
I don't think that she's ever going to learn to read or do anything else there that's going to be useful, not now, because I suspect she was reluctant to learn that in the first place.
For these children, because they have not had the experiences that help their brain organize systems to make sense of the world never makes sense.
Despite all her suffering and the damage it's done to her brain, Oksana does have an undeniable spirit and the truly remarkable human gift of forgiveness.
I suppose in some ways she probably doesn't really know any better, because watching this they talk about how remarkable and fascinating this is and the fact that she can forgive, but I feel like hating is quite a human trait, and if you haven't been growing up with humans, you probably haven't learned that type of an emotion to have in the first place. So how can you ever really be angry at someone again if you've just been growing up with dogs? Also, she doesn't really have a whole lot in her life, and there's not really an understanding there, I suppose, of her really hating our family. So actually I find it quite sad just watching this, as opposed to being super interesting, but it kind of is at the same time. It's interesting to compare this definitely to what a lot of the kids act like now on TikTok, that claim that they have all these ridiculous things that just don't add up whatsoever. And just to further the point from yesterday's video where they showed just the most ridiculous of TikToks of these people faking, and the way they went about it was actually quite nice as well, just saying that you have to be careful on what some of the stuff you show online. I think showing stuff like this really brings to light the sadder side of it, as opposed to someone dancing with colorful hair then switching to 10 different characters from Disney. Like, you know what I mean? With that all being said, I hope you guys are having a good day. I'll see you all in tomorrow's video. Bye-bye.